I cannot begin to explain how it felt. People, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, you must watch how I reacted to finding out what Hadestown was about before even watching this video. Link up here. It's a bonding experience. Everything else you watch on this channel will be better because we will have known each other on a deeper level, trust me. And speaking of knowing each other, I should tell you that this channel was created because a friend of mine told me I knew nothing about musicals, and I took it personally because, you know,
it was personal.
Now we're on a mission here to conquer the world of musical theatre. And if you're up for it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. I'm also on Patreon, where you get early access to videos and some extra content from time to time. So if you want to join the party there as well, link in description. As you may have guessed by the title of this video, I finally saw Hadestown live in the flesh. And that was like more than a month ago.
Better very late than never, right?
And if you've known me for even 2 seconds, you will know how big of a deal that is. Seeing Hadestown live, it's my absolute favorite show, and I've been waiting for years, so I had thoughts, plenty. So at press night, I wrote all of them down while reviewing the show, and I'm about to share them with you, song by song. All aboard! A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. But before we talk about this life-changing experience, I should mention that this video may contain minor spoilers about the current London production, like descriptions of specific performances, visuals, and production choices, so bear that in mind while watching the video. I've been avoiding all visual spoilers since I listened to the cast recording for the first time, so I had no idea what to expect from the production itself. Don't think I've ever made a better decision in my life, to be honest. Obviously, my expectations were extremely high, and I was a little bit nervous because of that. Well, I was asked if I was about to have a stroke at least 3 times that night, so I think a little bit nervous is underselling it. But I survived the experience, just about. And as soon as Melanie de la Barry, who plays Hermes in London, walked on that stage and yelled, "Alright!" to the audience, my first thought was, I'm already crying, but I am alright, yes. Yes, I was incredibly emotional, surprising no one. Just walking in that theatre, but I believe Melanie's command of the storytelling and the audience were crucial for that emotional response from the very start. She has such an impressive stage presence and such a skill in drawing you in and navigating Hermes' power as our narrator and guide without allowing that power to take over the character. Her Hermes has a level of respect and fascination, curiosity, and even pity for the characters around her, given she knows how the story ends, that is very clear and grounds Hermes in a way that makes you, as an audience member, essentially relate to a god. Then that opening song started. Regional accents, huh? Why didn't we think of that earlier? Right off the bat, the diversity of regional accents in the cast made a world of difference when it comes to my perception of the universe in which the show takes place. Allowing the actors to project some of their own identities onto these heavily fantasy-coded characters is so bloody enriching for the world building and the storytelling. It's essentially telling us that it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you're from, this story is for you and about you. This is a world that exists within your own world, but is also completely external to it at the same time. Plus, accents make the show feel so much more authentic as a piece of art, rather than a commercial Broadway copy and paste product. Art should be allowed to travel and change and adjust and reshape according to who is receiving it and how they're receiving it, as well as who is being trusted to propagate that message, meaning the cast here. And if you manage to write a show that allows that flexibility, you've done it right, the way I see it. The complexity of the Fate's presence. I had never realized, and this is something that you hear me say a lot on this video, how complex the Fate's presence and interactions with other characters are. Sometimes they represent inner thoughts, sometimes they seem to be physically present and bouncing off of the other characters, sometimes they seem to be haunting a scene where only certain characters can feel their presence or even see them. It's like they're actively choosing which form they're taking throughout the entire show. And that is also very true and accurate to their appearances in mythology and and literature in general. They have multiple names and different roles depending on the culture, and they choose to take different shapes based on that as well. And I love how beautifully the show mirrors that. It is so interesting how menacingly funny they are as well, because that doubt that they keep planting on everyone's minds and the dark humor that accompanies it come from the fact that as personifications of destiny, they know how everyone's lives begin, happen, and end. So they already know all that will happen. How sad it is that you can't ever be surprised. That's why all that is left is dark humor. Their humor must have a bitterness to it, otherwise they wouldn't be able to have humor at all. I love the Fates so much, and the casting for the London production, they chose actresses who have very different vocal ranges as well, which allows for beautiful harmonies.
Hold on, were there always harmonies in this?
One of my favorite things about knowing a cast recording before seeing the show is experiencing the power of good visual storytelling, and not only reflecting the meaning that the music is trying to convey, but also in many cases amplifying or changing those meanings. Of course, I had heard the ensemble harmonies in the first part of this song many times before, but I had never really noticed them and what they mean for the story this song is telling. The ensemble only mirrors Orpheus' words because he's trying to tell Eurydice that the world around them is going to provide all they need for the wedding, and the ensemble represents that world. They bring the birds and the flowers and the river that Orpheus mentions to life and into his plan, musically and lyrically. Love that.
How vocally challenging is Orpheus?
Mate, playing Orpheus 8 times a week must feel like a marathon for the vocal cords. The way those notes oscillate is insane. And I do think that inconsistency really helps us as the audience understand how much effort Orpheus is putting into that song. I mean, the song he's writing throughout the show. Having him sound all over the place gives us the idea that that is something that is unfinished. It's still in the works. Of course, it also gives the character a distinguishable feature. You hear those la 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 in their order and you know who it is. It clearly serves more than one purpose. Donald Finn, who is playing Orpheus in London, is really good and very charismatic. He has that sweet, naive look to him, but I could clearly tell the difference between his performance on the preview show that I saw and a few days later on opening night. So I believe the more he's settled in the character, the more his confidence as an actor is going to rub off on the character as well. His take already seems to be different from Reeve Carney's in the sense that his Orpheus comes across a bit more certain of himself, less dreamy. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how that develops.
Persephone spin-off show when?
When I tell you Gloria Onitiri is Persephone, and I don't mean she's a drunk in a failed marriage who can't be assertive about her wishes, but every element of her performance, expressions, body language, acting through song, it's also genuine and immersed in the reality of the character that I caught myself wishing multiple times for an entire Persephone show. And it's no piece of cake to take on a character that hides so much behind temporary fake joy. You can never expose too much of certain emotions because they should be constantly held back by whatever emotional anchor is stopping the character from being fully happy. In this case, Hades is the anchor. And that is tough, but she masters it completely. Persephone is so interesting and complex, and Gloria's performance is such stunning work that it makes room for a world of possibilities beyond her 2-hour appearance in Hadestown. Very often, especially during Act 1, they make you forget for a second that it's a tragedy, and obviously that's on purpose, but also reflects what Persephone is trying to do the whole time as well, right? Drowning in booze to try and forget that she's not exactly happy. Excellent character arc / main plot tie-in. Fun fact about this number here in London, Donald chose to sing Orpheus' toast when he goes to the patronist of all of this. It was quite disorienting at first, I'm not gonna lie, because obviously I wasn't expecting it. If you ask me what I like better, I'd probably say his spoken speech breaks a bit of that constancy of a sung-through show, which I like in this case. And the structure of the sentences already sounds so poetic and fluid, like you're singing the words even if you're not. So actually singing them sounded a little bit redundant to me. It's still interesting to experience that choice.
Wow, they're really telling a sub-story with no words. I see what you did there.
Dance sequence can be really nice. I love a tap number, for example, but to me, there is nothing more exciting than movement with meaning. Not necessarily in a dance scenario. Seeing someone do a specific move and immediately understand what they mean under the surface feels magical. You know how they have people play the bullet in Hamilton? The way they managed to show tenderness clashing with the harshness of the world, and only a few moves in this sequence, was absolutely gorgeous. Eurydice pushes Orpheus away as she sings "Now I Wanna Hold You." That shows hesitance, insecurity, previous hurt that she doesn't want to repeat. While Orpheus is frozen for the most part because there is also meaning in no movement, waiting for her to make a choice. And it's only when she moves closer that he moves too. And I don't think there's a better way to use a visual medium in benefit of your storytelling. All I've ever known is how to hold my own. Now I wanna hold you. Pushes him.
The irony, huh?
This is a fun one because it comes right after Orpheus and Eurydice officially become a couple. So they're joyful and in love, but suddenly everyone starts panicking because they can hear the Hadestown train coming. Persephone is having what looks like a panic attack on stage. Hermes is walking up and down. The ensemble is spooked, but our two lovebirds are just chilling, lounging around, watching as they freak out, completely blinded by their recently found love. And back when I only had the music, I couldn't see the irony in this scene. The irony in the fact that later on in the show, Orpheus calls out Hades and Persephone for being blinded by their relationship issues and ignoring the world up above, which is precisely what he's doing in this scene. That was the coolest thing about the difference between my previous experience and my current experience of this song.
Oh my god, I think my soul is about to ascend.
There is probably nothing more satisfying in this entire album to me than the transition between Epic 2 and Chant. The build-up between the noise the workers make until the bass drops at the start of Chant is just divine! And this whole scene on stage is all about connections as well, right? So the link between the two songs is very appropriate in every sense. We see all their stories intersect visually and plot-wise for the first time, and to make sure that intersection comes across, they make great use of the revolving stage. It allows multiple characters to move in different directions. So it's not only very visually dynamic, but it also makes the storytelling more interesting. The revolving stage is a big highlight of the show for me, by the way, but I'll talk about it more later. For this scene in particular, it allows for the composition to be a real feast for the eyes.
It goes from party to funeral so quickly.
Of course, I had noticed the change in pace and mood between the Fates parts in When the Chips Are Down and Gone I'm Gone, but I had never truly felt the sorrow of the situation and the heartbreak in Eurydice's choice until I saw her actually disappear on stage. And the Fates directly challenged the audience about judging Eurydice's choice, asking the audience, in her situation, wouldn't you do the same? Being able to see the consequence of Eurydice's choice in the flash made all the difference to how I see this song.
Did the walls just fucking move?
I cannot begin to explain how it felt to see the set actually move. The sound I made when those walls opened up was not human. I apologize to the people sitting next to me. I did not mean to react, but my body just couldn't take it all in. I'm not that strong. This number was a big surprise to me because I have a bittersweet relationship with this song. This is the show's selling song, right? It's the one they perform and promote everywhere. So it used to give me the ick just because of how often it was performed. I just could not hear that way. But the sequence of stunning production choices that shaped this sequence slapped me across the face so hard, I came back to my senses. For starters, the structure of the song is so exciting. Hermes begins with a light narration followed by Orpheus' subtle appeal to Eurydice. As the song progresses, they both get increasingly motivated and probably more scared too because you have the Fates doubting them halfway through. So Orpheus reaches out to his music for strength, and they show us, the audience, that he finds it by making the lights brighter. We can actually feel the warmth from the audience. Like we're all getting closer to hell too. It's so good. Then suddenly, the bloody walls open up and we're there in Hadestown. And all this way, the music followed the emotional state of the characters so closely. It was like we were walking with Orpheus step by step. It felt so immersive to me. I also absolutely love how they brought lyrical elements to life, like the telephone wires represented by the swinging lights, which Herbert mentions earlier in the song, the challenges of the journey, which the fates are there to represent, as well as the power of Orpheus' music in the set change. And man, Melody's energy in this is impeccable. Everything comes together beautifully and the song has much more impact because of the thinking behind the meanings they wanted to convey. This was also the first time I was awestruck by the lighting of the show. But I'll talk more about that later because this wasn't my favorite lighting moment.
Thank the gods for sound designers.
Jessica Pass, taking my hat off to you. Sound design is not something I usually notice when reviewing a show, but you just can't ignore it in Hadestown. From the noise the workers make blending into the beat, to Hades' voice reverbing in Why We Build a Wall, as if he was actually somewhere confined, like a tunnel or, you know, the underground. Art details simply impossible to ignore due to how they enrich the atmosphere of the scene and your experience as an audience member.
Bloody hell, was this song actually supposed to make me feel sad?
The relatability of the characters becomes so much more prominent once you can see them act and react as well, right? Our Lady of the Underground is such an incredible example of that. Probably the standout to me in that sense. It sounds like a summer party. It's jazzy, there's a fair amount of cheering from the ensemble, and this intensity in Persephone's performance that, combined with the music, makes it quite sexy as well. And sure, there's quite a few hints to the cracks in her state of mind in the lyrics. Alice, she literally sings "There's a crack on the wall" at some point. The very first line of the song is a very ironic "step into my office," which mirrors and mocks Hades' line earlier as he invites Eurydice into his office. So right off the bat, you know the song will be a little bit more than just an introduction to the character. It will take us deeper into her psyche. But nothing could have prepared me for how much more bitter it is to actually watch the scene they're painting on stage. First of all, she gets out of her spring green dress and into a full black outfit, as if she's in mourning for her own life, which she probably is. Second, in many instances, she moves as if she was convulsing, like in actual pain. Her performance in this one is erratic, from the stage movement to the dissonant elements in the music, and you can tell that very well at the start of the song when we hear instruments coming at what sounds like random moments. It just sounds wrong, doesn't it? In a good way, in a planned way, because it makes sense for the character. Even the way she introduces the band feels like a distraction, like she's trying to move the audience's attention away from her because she doesn't want us to see the truth, which is actually something she constantly does throughout the show. She's trying to tell us, hey, this is nothing but a party, believe me, look, I even have a band and everything. Bitch. And then the cherry on top, the big gulp she takes out of her flask, finishing the song with the saddest I've ever heard as she tries to drown her sorrows. Proper depressing. My perspective of many of the songs changed drastically after seeing the show, but I don't think any of them had the contrasting impact this one had.
Ooh, those two have more chemistry than a school lab.
It's very funny when I think back to the press event I went to before the show even opened, where most of the cast performed for the first time, because Donalfin and Grace Hodgett, who plays Eurydice, seemed so shy around each other. I was hesitant about the casting for just a second there, before I realized they couldn't have known each other for very long before that press event. In fact, that could have been the first time they were actually meeting. So it's only natural that they wouldn't be super comfortable around each other and in the characters' skins. With that in mind, if there's one solid proof of their talent as actors, is how much chemistry they developed since then. You can't help but root for them, which makes the end of the show even harder to witness. You know what they say, with great casting comes great pain. Slightly unrelated, but this is the point of the show when I noticed it. It's really cool how they give a soundtrack to certain scenes as well, musicalizing dialogue in a lot of the scenes that use the revolving stage, even when no one is actually singing. It makes it all feel a bit more cinematic and really helps you stay immersed in following that fast pace of the show.
Dono's best yet.
It is known that every single performer in every show has their number. They can be overall great, but there's always that one sequence where they stand out, when they're just slightly better, or in some cases much better, than in any other number of the show. If it's true, it's the one for Donalfin. His performance is just outstanding on another level, full of this hurt that leads into desperate hope, which is very in character for Orpheus. The song fits his voice range perfectly. There's something quite visceral to the way he encourages the workers to fight for the freedom. I mean, he is great overall, but just slightly better in If It's True.
Ooh, someone is breaking the rules.
The lighting of the show in general is stunning, and there's great variety in its usage, but there's something super interesting about how they use lighting during How Long specifically. They break the norm, which is something that actually happens as soon as we get to Hadestown with its warm, bright colors. It makes sense because we're supposed to be in hell, and it represents fire and the neon city that Hades built. Warm colors, however, tend to be used for the hero of the story. They tend to represent happy, hopeful moments. Not in Hadestown, they don't. And during How Long, it's more noticeable because it's in direct contrast with the cold colors they use for Persephone. Whenever it's her turn to sing in this song, the stage turns blue, while Hades draws yellow lights. They managed to make warm, bright lighting menacing. That's a very rare usage of the colors in the warm spectrum of the wheel. And here's what I love the most about this contrast. The way I see it, Hades shining warm and Persephone cold makes the warm colors feel menacing because it represents, quite literally in this case, Hades being the one who is stealing her brightness, her sunshine, her warmth. I know you have to sleep on that.
Now this is how you use a revolving stage, ladies and gentlemen.
If there's one thing other theatre creatives should be checking the Hadestown textbook for, is how to use a revolving stage. The movement from this point on in the show is like magic. We see many shows using a revolving stage just because the budget allowed. And yeah, it looks cool, but if there's no true purpose, it comes across gimmicky. Of course, the actions of falling into a hole and walking are heavily featured on the show, which makes the revolving stage very useful already, but it also allows the production to represent the different storylines coming closer or growing apart. Besides being a little nod to the endless cycle of the show, and being the main character of one of my favorite scenes, probably my favorite actually, which we'll talk about in a bit.
New lyrics, who this?
For some reason that I can't quite comprehend, they added new verses to Epic 3 for this production, so I'd share the lyrics with you. It went like this. I know how it is because he's like me. I know how it is to be left all alone. There's a hole in his arms where the world used to be when Persephone is gone. His work never done, his war never won, will go on forever, whatever the cost. Because the thing that he's built in his wall around is already lost. I'm not 100% sure what the goal was here. Maybe they wanted to humanize Hades a bit more by singing about how lonely and hopeless and scared he feels of losing Persephone. But I do quite like the verses, there's a hole in his arms where the world used to be, and cause the thing that he's building his wall around is already lost. Because they're beautiful additions to Orpheus' poetry, completely destroying Hades and Persephone, only to bring them back to life and together. Those lines represent that idea quite brilliantly.
Look, it's my favorite.
Proof that you don't need any special effects to make things visually interesting. To me, the fantasy aspect of the show reaches its peak during Doubt comes in. Oh, I've got chills just thinking about it. The way Orpheus is the only character who is constantly in sight during this sequence, while all the others are brought to light by the revolving stage, only to disappear in the pitch black background seconds later, is the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. And the fates are probably my favorite part of the scene because they use not only movement to create that sensation that they're disappearing, but also the light from the lamps they're carrying going on and off, like these spirits floating around Orpheus. So spooky and mystical, it truly makes them feel otherworldly. Besides reflecting how cloudy doubt makes your judgment, where you sometimes can see clearly, sometimes not. My jaw was on the freaking floor.
Wait, is this not actually part of the show?
Imagine my surprise when I realized the show ends before this number. I mean, what? To be fair, We Raise a Cup always felt a bit detached from the rest, especially considering it follows Road to Hell Reprise, which clearly wraps up the main messages and motifs of the show. So I could tell it was an extra, but I still thought it connected to the main portion of the show somehow. And it was really interesting to watch because the line between being on and off character seemed very blurry. I felt like some of the cast members were in character, some not so much. But what made it feel a bit more organic was the fact that most characters break the fourth wall during the show, so singing directly to the audience in this moment comes more naturally because we've seen them break the fourth wall before. So there you go! All the thoughts I had watching my favorite show for the first time. This has been a journey, and I know that many of you have been going on this journey with me from the very start, so thank you. Concept alone, mixing Greek mythology with the New Orleans music scene and familiar political, social, and environmental issues. It is just so fascinating to me. It's an onion show, isn't it? There's so many layers to it that only get more and more interesting as you start to peel. And I really, really love how it brings mythology a little bit closer to home when it usually feels so removed from our reality. That was quite an experience, and I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but I do believe I see theatre in a different light because of it. Did you enjoy this video? Then make sure you leave your like and share your experience seeing Hadestown in the comments below, and I'll see you next time to conquer the world of musical theatre. Keep singing. Ciao!
Brothers, good night.